Everyone, welcome to the next episode of Outcomes. I'm your host, Barrett King, and with me today is an interesting guest, someone I've known for a little while now. His name's Justin. He is the CEO and founder of partnerplaybooks.com and the owner of partnerwebinar.com. Actually might be the longest title that I've had on the show so far, but a valuable one because what I would describe you as, if I missed this, tell me, is a community and brand builder, but specifically through the partner webinar lens. You do something really interesting with content, with community, with this whole playbook motion. So we're going to get into that in a second. But first off, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited because you've got a real wealth of knowledge and depth in terms of the way that you've thought about doing some really interesting work across the partnerships and ecosystem space. Before we get into it, the question I ask everybody, obviously, is what does partnerships mean to you? And you said it's about solving common customer problems together through product, sales, and marketing. Do you want to add to that? Do you want to keep it?
Yeah, I'd like to add every day is a new day. So I add to my tactical and practical knowledge around the philosophies that I've been working on for the last decade. And so at the center of that, obviously, is that statement. In the most recent, I would say, update, new version of that is that there's a Venn diagram of three circles that I see converging, and in my perception of things is the future of, we'll say, marketing, ecosystems, and community. And so that is community is one circle overlapping with partnerships. And the third element is live events. And what I see sitting contextually supporting it, however you want to look at it from whatever direction, is the goal of owning the attention of the ecosystem. And those three ways of Venn diagramming them together is my approach to the ownership of that attention.
I love it. I'm visual. So now I see three circles in the air and the overlap, and you nailed that. I love the analogy, the description of it. When I think about what you're describing, the first thing that comes top of mind for me is, if I'm somebody already in this space, right, that's a little bit of a unique take. You're talking about three different components of a go-to-market strategy across really different levers, but still utilizing the same ideology in terms of, evangelizing a brand and helping to gain reach and whatnot. So, if we talk about this in terms of fit, right, how does this fit into your marketing, your brand, your partner strategy? When you talk about the diagram, you talk about sort of the fundamentals of the future of the way that we leverage ecosystems. I'm really curious how you've thought about that.
Yeah, well, I'd like to first give a little statement of authority and authenticity to what I'm saying. And so those of you who know me, obviously, you see my stuff on LinkedIn. I was listed as Crossbeam's #1 person in 2022 to follow in partnerships. And over the last 6 months, instead of working and selling everything that I know and do to another company, I went off on my own to found my own playbooks, consulting, and soon to be app. And in that process, what I've built and what underpins this belief system is actual practical implementations of these through the execution of these different methodologies and playbooks is a community of over 1,500 partnership marketers, partnership managers, partnership directors at all the best companies. And I'm blown away by how effective this approach to where community meets the events, which meets partnerships, and how I'm seeing this work for both myself in my partner playbooks community as well as for my clients. And so what I'm sharing with you and how I see these things converge isn't just philosophy, it's actual implementation and real world results.
I love that. It's such a validating statement. And what I'm picturing, again, because I'm visual, is this is the intersection of people. This is the connectivity between the way that human beings interact. How much of the work that you've done has been based off of observation versus application, like you described, versus learning from folks in the community? I'm always very intrigued at where these learnings come from.
Yeah, I'm a very heads down. Best way to learn is to do. And so I'm not much of a book reader. I'm not much of a course taker. I'm like my dad, a craftsman and a carpenter. And so I have just pieced together, whether by intuition and or experience, the things that I've learned and done. And so I will be in the community and I will listen to the conversations and the needs and the pain points, being a very empathetic, open to hearing what's needed in those conversations by the market, by the community, and then working to understand, well, what do I know and where my expertise can be applied versus then where I don't know, who can I find to bring in to help solve that, to be, I almost call it a matchmaker for ideas and inspiration. And so when I can be the expert, I will tell you. When I'm not, I'll bring somebody else on. And so for me, that's been my rhythm of learning, is doing and then stopping where my expertise stops and then bringing in others, and then just trying and applying iteratively, month over month, email over email, partner conversation over partner conversation, until I see what works and what doesn't. And so I'm in the minutia of like literally the characters that it takes word by word, letter by letter, because I believe that the first relationship that we have and the way we can drive partnerships is through the conversations that we're communicating with our readers, with our own partner community. And then that relationship compounds into them knowing, liking, and trusting you. That's how you build authority and influence. And then they have their lists of people. They have their ecosystems. They have their communities. Once you've made that bond and connection and have that influence, you can unlock things that you can't do by just cold prospecting or reading a book or taking a course. And so for me, it's just application day by day, word by word, and then relying on what where I came from was the understanding of copywriting and direct marketing and influence.
It's so interesting because what I'm hearing you talk about is what the show's all about, right? It's about outcomes, and that's why we've rebranded and why we focused on talking to operators that have been there and done the work and have something to share, something to talk about in terms of not just their experience, but their failures, because they learn from them, and their opportunities to bring that forward. I just talked to somebody a few hours ago. It's so interesting how these things come together. This person was talking about specifically, I won't put them on the show in that sense, but she said you should be in the role for a little while, and she wanted a little bit of feedback. And she said, yeah, I want the answer to X. And I said, like, you're asking the wrong question. So what do you mean? And she said, well, I know the answer. I think then it's really just this thing over here. I'm trying to not be specific. Forgive me, folks that are listening. I'm not doing a good job here, but what she was trying to get to is she was trying to answer a question she hadn't even asked yet, which is, what does her partner actually want? And how do I go to market to engage my customers where they are? And all these sort of fundamental things. She said, well, do you have the answer, Barrett? I said, no, because you haven't asked the question yet. You don't know, the insights aren't there because you haven't done the work. And what you're describing to me, Justin, is this idea of going in and executing on time and time again, the muscle memory part of this. Let me go take the thing that I've learned and applied and do it over and over again. Is that a lot of then what you've tried to do in terms of the professional side of your last, you said 6 months or so, with partner playbooks and capturing those mechanisms, those experiences? I don't want to spoil it. So talk to me about that part of what you're doing.
Yeah, a little bit of deviation from the main thing of copywriting and marketing, but people don't know this. I haven't shared this in a while, but I'd say one of the biggest skills that connects strategy to execution is operations. And it's like the thing people don't like to invest in. It's tedious, it's technical, documentation. But for me, one of the biggest things that I've been able to do, and maybe you can see or not see it over here, of one of the best go-to-market teams I ever built, was fundamentally off of a couple of things. One, the philosophy of what we stand for, what we're doing, but then the connective tissue between that strategy and then the results, and keeping the teams and stakeholders aligned was just rigorous, sprint by sprint documentation, and then refactoring of the templates that we executed on, micro-adjusting tasks, micro-adjusting the SOPs to the point where every time you launch that particular version of that particular playbook, you are sitting down and doing your retros. I call them end right. If you can end right, you can start right. And if you can start right, you end right. And so instead of calling them retros and kickoff meetings, I actually have a specifically psychologically dialed in word and phrases to help really capture. We're going to start right. That way we can execute, and then end right. And for me, that has been where the lessons and the learning and the compounding is. And I was giving a demonstration of this to Ella over at Partner Hacker. She was asking me, how are you doing this, and how are you bringing people into scale? And I go, well, let me show you. And I showed her, like, in every single task, there's the SOP, and they get updated. She's like, oh my God, literally, you can take someone who's not been a part of your company, not been a part of the roles and responsibilities previously. You can plug them in and literally hand them a playbook that they can execute on with, I would say, confidence. Even if they lack the competence, you can coach them to then build and scale the playbooks. And for me, the only way you get there is by rigorously detailing and doing the job and figuring out what worked or what didn't work, and putting that into, if you can't program it into the system, or it's not like a step of automation, and you have to then figure out, if you can't automate it, you have to then figure out how to help automate the person in the role by documenting what can't be done by machines.
I love that call out there too. It's the obsession with the data, the obsession with the process, and the hyper focus. I mean, what you're describing to me is this really high attention to detail in terms of focusing on specifically the tactical components of executing on whatever that task is, whatever that job role function is. And I've talked to, like you, a lot of folks that say, what's the answer? And the answer is to do the work and
do and document.
Yes, exactly.